There's so much inspiration around us. You know, keep your eyes open. Always look for something that you might be able to turn into an artwork. When I was driving home from IKEA a couple of days ago, I noticed this cactus at the side of the road. It was huge, and after a bit of Googling, and all these images come from a free image website, I discovered that it more than likely was prickly pear. I loved the look of it. It just had these huge leaves just sitting on top of other huge leaves, and I just was in wonder of it. So today we're watercolouring a cactus. For today's art class, we're going to need a piece of watercolour paper. My one that I'm using today is A4. We're going to need some greens and probably a grey for mixing some really great green tone colours. So I've got a couple of pan sets here, and I've also got some watercolour liquid ones that all you need to use is a very small amount. We need a paint palette, we need an eraser and a pencil. We're going to do a very light drawing first of all. You need a couple of paint brushes. I've got a larger round one and a small one just there, so that's to add a bit of detailing. You always need, whenever we use watercolours, a or two containers of clean water. Don't fill them up too much because you don't want your the wood part of your paintbrush getting into the water, because that eventually damages it. So just enough to cover the metal part, or you know, keep that under, just like this. I'll show you. See how the wood part's not getting in? That's what we need to remember. Now, I went to IKEA a couple of days ago and I grabbed these coat hangers. I thought they'd be great. So I'm going to actually paint my piece to hang on to that coat hanger. I think that'll look pretty cool. A plant specimen hanging up on that. And I got another one, and that's going to add to the bundle of giveaway goodies once I eventually get to 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So that's going in with a whole heap of other stuff that I've been collecting to give away to one of my subscribers once we get to 1,000. All right, so we'll need to get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is draw my little cactus. Now, when I was driving along the road, I actually saw what appeared to be a prickly pear cactus. It's just gorgeous. So the first thing that we need to figure out is, are we going to have our piece of paper landscape or portrait? And I'm thinking I might do portrait style today. Now, I will turn this around, but I'm doing it opposite direction. So I thought my pot, well, I'm going to have it in some sort of pot. Try and get kind of the center, and I can already see that that's not the center. So pretty much I'll do a tiny little dot where I think the center is. I could, you know, I could measure it if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. So I think I'm just going to do it in now. I don't have anything, so I'm just doing this from memory, and sometimes that's okay to draw things just from memory. You know, I've got a clear memory of what the cactus looked like. There was one lone humongous cactus, but I have seen them before in you know, when I'm driving along the side of the road. All right, so my pot isn't great, but that's okay. Today's a little bit of an experiment in working in different tones of colours. So that's going to be my pot. I just might make that like a terracotta pot, so just have the oranges and whatnot. I probably will rub that out a little bit more. Now, these cactus are the most strangest looking things, but in their strangeness, I think they're just fascinating. So they have these huge circles, and I don't know if you can see that. I might actually stop and do it close up so you can see this way. So they have these huge, big bulbous leaves coming from a really tiny, tiny little area attached to the next one. And then they have another one kind of on top of that. And maybe even another one on top of that. So what you can do is just create your bulbous leaves coming from the previous leaf. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to leave, I might need to fix up this little bit here a bit, but there we have it. And now I'm going to start the watercolour part. Just make sure I position this in the right spot so you can see it. Okay, that looks pretty good. So this bottom part you can see clearly. Alright, I'll start about here, which is where you can see. Alright, so I have already popped some watercolour into there, you can see that. Now I thought that I would start with the lightest green, and what I'll do, just show you how to do a couple, and then I will show you when I've actually completed it. So I do the same, I load up my paintbrush with water, and then I give this a really good mix to get some great pigment happening. Now I'm not pre-wetting it today, I'm not sure how that looks. Possibly got a bit too much pigment there, that will probably do the whole lot, truthfully. So what I'm just going to do is go around the outside with this lighter green, and what I'm doing today is just starting off with the light colour, and I'll have my light so it's coming from the front. So these middle sections I might pat out some of the watercolour to make it look like it's lighter in the front. Maybe a little bit darker down here, but I'll use a darker green to add to that. So you can notice that I'm not getting any more paint on my paintbrush. I'm actually going to do, hopefully you can see that. I'm just going to stand up so I can make sure you can see. Now remember the beauty of watercolour, it pretty much does, you can control it when you do things like this. And look, I'm only a beginner. I'm only learning all of this stuff as we pretty much do it together. So I just love using watercolour. You know, I've used it to do little illustrations and things like that, but I've never really painted properly with it. So when I do these art activities or these art classes, we're kind of doing them together. Now I can still see that pencil underneath, but I'm okay with that. So I can actually fill this whole lot in, and I don't want to fill the whole lot in. I just want to give it a kind of, I don't know, bit of light. I'll fill this one in because but see how that's gone there. See how where I've used minimum, and I don't mind leaving a few little white spots. That adds to the effect. So I might just get a little bit more of that paint. Now remember, this is not pre-wet, this is just watercolour on straight dry paper. I mean, I probably should just stick to one at a time, but I'm working so quickly today on these. This is actually the first part. I noticed I had a little Google search of some prickly pears, and they have these little prickles on them. So on all the different images, it looked like, you know, some were dark, some were light. So I'm actually going to just do little white ones. Now you can use, well, I didn't add that in the list of things to do, but you can use we've used watercolour ink previously, the white watercolour ink, when we added our little dots to our whale. But you can also use watered down acrylic, which I didn't add to my list of things that you need, but you might like to just grab your watercolour acrylic, your acrylics, and just water them down. So that's the first part. Now you could totally leave it like that, but I wouldn't mind maybe adding a bit of a darker green to this. Maybe a little bit of that grey in it to darken it up. So that's kind of turned, well, no, that's a bit too grey. So put that over there. Yeah, I like that. Now I'm not quite sure how this is going to go, but that's not too bad actually. That's going okay. So we'll just add a little bit of green so on that side, and then I'll just add a little bit of that green to the other side, and then kind of try and blend that all in. So we'll see how that goes. Ooh, I like how that looks, except for that little spot there. So I'll get rid of that and paint that through like that. Yeah, I'm really liking that. Can you see that? So that's how I'm actually going to leave that for now. I might decide to go a bit darker, I'm not sure. So I'm actually going to do that to all of the little leaves. Just very carefully go on the outside. I should be able to blend that in. Now I wanted it to be a bit dark down the bottom, because obviously there's going to be shadows where it's getting covered up by the pot plant, and then we'll drag that around there like that. Might blend this out just a little. So I'm really loving the colours in this one, so I'm going to try and copy those colours there and spread that out a little bit. Now I used a little bit more of this darker colour to do that, so that ended up being the good colour to use after all. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. That looks nice. Get some of this really bright green out. Just creating different, lots of lovely different tones. Yeah, that's a little bit too, for me, that's a little bit too bright, so I'm going to get some of that out and add some of the greyish green to it, and just not add any more colour, but just try and blend that in a little bit. Yeah, I like that. I might even pat some of that colour out in a minute to give a little bit of white, make it look like some white is coming through there. All right, so I possibly could have used my smaller paintbrush on these, actually, which is what I might do. I'll just get a little bit of this. I'm just going to pat some colour out of that, which, yeah, see, I think that looks a bit better. And then I'm going to pat some of this out because I just used way too much water there. So get some of the water off, get some of this colour. And I was just going to use my smaller paintbrush, wasn't I? Get a little bit of that grey kind of colour. Now this shape is a little bit round, but that's okay. This is like the first, the first time that I've done something like this, so it's all a matter of just experimenting, having a bit of fun. Now what I'm going to do is speed up me painting this. You don't have to watch me do the whole thing. So what I've done here is just continued to add depth using a variety of greens. Tried to get it just darker and darker as I went. Didn't use too much paint. I tried using the smaller paintbrush, and I did use the small paintbrush quite a bit, but I ended up going back to my larger paintbrush. I like the bristles on that a whole lot better, and I can get a really fine tip at the end of that anyway. I just kept adding darker. I ended up going towards the greyish green. I used actually quite a bit of grey into the mid green that I had put out on my palette using the liquid watercolours. But as I said, you can use liquid or pen, it doesn't really matter. You could even use watered down acrylics if you wanted. It wouldn't have that vividness of colour. But just because you don't have the materials doesn't mean you don't give this a try. You could even try this in painting just acrylics if you liked. That might be another activity that we could, that I could do an art class on. whenever I thought that I'd put too much paint in, I just dabbed it up with some tissue paper. You can use like a small piece of old material to dab up paint. I use this technique quite a bit. I just think that it shows that light is reflecting on that when I take it, but still a little bit of the colour, the washed out colour, stays behind, so I really like that look. When I started the terracotta pot, I started out with orange, and it was way too orange, but that was okay because it added depth. What I realised is that I was, you know, using many colours on this pot, and those many colours created depth and reality, because when we look at something, it's not just one solid colour, it's lots of different colours. Our brain sees it as one colour, so say you look at an orange and you go, oh yeah, that's orange. But if you had a really good look at an orange, you would see lots of different orange tones through it. You might even see some white speckles where the light shines on it. So that's what you are trying to create today, just using lots of different tones, lots of different colours in the same colour range. So our cactus leaves, we used green. Our terracotta pot, we're using oranges and browns. I even put a very dark grey in this. I ended up patting up some of it because it was a little bit too dark, but some of it got left behind, and that created lovely depth and interest to the painting. So I'm going to leave you looking at me very quickly finishing off the rest of this painting. Okay, so I'm going to show you close up how I'm going to do this. I have the water ink, oh, which I nearly dropped. That would have been a disaster. And you can also substitute that with a little bit of watered down acrylics, but I just use that because I've got it there. Now all that we're going to do is get a very fine brush and just paint some little spikes coming out of it. You can do different sizes, you can do all the same size. It doesn't come out dark, but that's okay. I don't want it to be too dark because I still want the lovely tones of all the greens coming through. So now what you have to do, I'm not going to show you me doing this whole thing. Oh, that was a bit thick, but that's okay. Try and keep them as thin as I can. Probably could even use a smaller paintbrush actually, but you've got the idea. I like these ones up here better than these thicker ones, so I might quickly rub those thicker ones out, although they are fading a little bit, but I'll rub those out. I'm not going to show you me filming all of these. I'll show you once I've finished. And here is my finished painting of the cactus. Please, if you've enjoyed this, like and subscribe. More importantly, subscribe. Once I get to 1,000 subscribers, I'm having a giveaway of a piece of artwork, but also some materials that I've been using to create some of these pieces as well. So don't forget, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.